From San Diego State University, celebrating a century of learning, this is KPBS San Diego.
The following program is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is being broadcast statewide on California Public Television. This series has been endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association.
California's Gold is provided to the PBS network statewide through a grant from Wells Fargo Bank, coming through for Californians for over 135 years.
Hi, I'm Huell Howser, and right now we're traveling down Interstate 8, which cuts across the very southern part of our state from San Diego over to Yuma, Arizona. You know, lots of times when we're traveling down the highway, we're either going so fast or talking to somebody else in the car or listening to the radio. And our minds are a million miles away. We don't pay any attention at all to the country we're traveling through. It's all kind of a scenic blur. But you know, there's a lot of interesting and very historic stuff out there. And on this particular program, we're actually going to stop and visit two of those places. Places that otherwise we would have just driven right on by and not even known they were there. I call this program A Closer Look because that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to stop and take a closer look at two fine examples of California's gold. Now, if there ever was a time I would have driven right past something significant without even knowing it was there, this would have been it. Because when you're driving east on Interstate 8 through Imperial County, things are pretty flat and kind of monotonous. Then, about 45 miles east of El Centro, not too far from the Arizona state line, suddenly these beautiful, huge white sand dunes appear. 12 miles wide at their widest point and over 40 miles long. They definitely dominate the landscape. But the dunes themselves weren't what we were looking for. We were in search of something in the dunes, and we were told it was right off the interstate. In fact, there it is, a little-known bit of California history that's hard to find, hard to see, even if you're looking for it. Now, to get to this place, we had to get off the interstate onto a little two-lane road that took us even closer to the dunes. In fact, there was a strong wind blowing that day, and the sand from the dunes was beginning to cover the road. But undaunted, we pressed on and finally reached our destination. And in case you're wondering just what this is, well, it's what's left of the Plank Road. They started building the Plank Road from scratch back in 1914, right through the dunes. And when it opened for traffic in 1915, it was something to see. In fact, looking at these old pictures, it's an amazing sight. A single-lane road, 6 miles long, made entirely out of planks. You see, before the Plank Road, it was impossible to cross the dunes by car. You either had to go south down into Mexico or go way up around the north end and then back down. Well, the San Diego City Fathers wanted motorists to have a direct route to their city from the east. And the only way to do that was to build a road through, well, actually over the dunes. So that's exactly what they did. And this innovative roadway was put to good use from 1915 to 1926, when it was finally replaced by a paved road. Well, over the years, when it was no longer being used, the old Plank Road fell into disrepair. Parts of it were covered by sand. Parts of it were used by campers for firewood. And a lot of people simply forgot that it ever existed. But these days, you can still visit the old road, and see it for yourself, thanks to the Bureau of Land Management, who have preserved 1,500 feet of it in its original natural environment. Good afternoon. We're here.
Good. Have a good trip?
We had a great trip. Arriving in style in a beautifully restored vintage touring car, I'd accepted an invitation from some Imperial County locals who were very proud of their old road and who wanted to personally show it to me. And you know what that meant? I got to hear some first-hand stories about what it was like to actually travel on the old plank road. Now, what was it like riding down this old plank road? Because you've told me you did that a couple of times.
Yes, it was a holiday for us to go to Yuma because we didn't travel miles in those days like we do now. And riding across for the 7 miles from here to Yuma was like riding a roller coaster or as good as having a chiropractic adjustment. That's what I always said.
So, in other words, it was kind of bumpy.
It was very rough.
What was the adventure of going on the plank road? What were the pitfalls that lay ahead as you started on this journey?
Well, you'd always worry about meeting a car because they had these turnout deals, and the one closest to them had to take advantage of if they had to back up even to get to the turnout. And if someone was very stubborn and made up their mind they weren't going to back up, then all the men would just lift the car up, move it off, and then everybody go by and then get on the tracks again. Put the car back on the track and let it go.
So it was a one-lane road.
One-lane road with the turnouts about every half mile, I think they were, where it was double wide. And there were, on the turnouts, there was room for several cars.
What was the rule of etiquette? What were you supposed to do?
The one nearest the turnout was supposed to back up to it. That was the rule.
We were going sightseeing over to Yuma, and we got out here on the road, and of course they have these pullouts. Well, we had the right-of-way to go, but the other fellow coming did not pull out. We got halfway down there, and he wouldn't give, so we had to back very carefully back to the turnout.
You had to back all the way?
We had to back all the way, and don't you think that they were sweating it to think that so they wouldn't run off that road, that being that narrow.
Well, why didn't y'all just get out and have a talk with this guy coming towards you?
Well, he must have been a Texan.
Hey, Huell, what we've done here is fence off about a 1,500-foot portion of the original plank road, and we've also put in some examples of what the original road would have looked like when it was new. These replicas were constructed by volunteers out here.
So this was the first plank road.
This is what the original plank road looked like between 1915 and 1916, and you can see how tough it would have been to keep your wheels on the road. It's approximately 4 feet between the two planks there.
So you would have had to keep the wheels on these two planks.
That's right. Keep the wheels on the planks. If you got one wheel or both wheels off, you'd easily get stuck, have to hoist it back up onto the road.
So they quickly learned and ended up constructing, this is what the second plank road looked like.
Right. From 1916 until 1926, this better version is what visitors would have traveled over. You didn't have to keep your tires so narrowly on the planks.
This must have seemed like heaven to them after riding on that thing.
Oh, it must have been quite an improvement, like our interstates today compared to that thing over there.
Wow, this looks, now, you know, really when it's new like this and not all weather beaten and torn up, this doesn't look too bad, does it?
When it was new, it was probably a pretty smooth ride across here. In later versions, they covered it with the asphalt that we've seen on the relic part over there. So it was probably a pretty good road when they kept it maintained and uncovered with sand.
And pretty sturdy, too.
Very sturdy.
Wasn't it heavy to move these things around?
It was heavy, but they used teams of draft animals, and they also had some innovative derricks or cranes that they put together to lay the sections down. They were brought over from the railroad siding at Ogilby, a few miles from here, transported by railroad to that point, and then brought out and laid down piece by piece with this derrick contraption that they put together.
Now, how big a problem was this sand absolutely covering the road? in a matter of hours.
It'll happen overnight in a matter of hours. We drove over some sand drifts as we came in this morning to film this on the paved road.
Uh-huh. But what about back then? What kind of a problem did it present them back then?
Well, aside from stopping the people from their progress on the road, these big scrapers that had to be used to scrape the sand off the road helped to destroy the road that they were using.
What do you mean? You mean it ate up the wood?
Right. These scrapers pulled by teams of horses would cut and gouge the wood as they were trying to uncover the road and pull the sand off of it.
How ambitious a project, technically speaking, was this to build a plank road across 6-7 miles of desert, of sand dunes?
In those days, it was considered quite an achievement, quite a project. There wasn't anything else like it in the United States that we know of, and nobody had tried to build a road over these sand dunes at that time. Nobody knew exactly what was going to happen.
So did they do this on faith? What did they do? How did they know it would even work?
Well, some people have said that they would put brush down and the cars could travel over the brush for a couple of days before that was destroyed. But they just had to experiment and try it, and luckily it did work for them.
Now, in 1926, they replaced the road completely, right, with a newfangled asphalt road.
That's correct. The California highway engineers discovered that they could build a permanent paved road over the dunes, and even though this was replaced, people did look at it with some nostalgia, and it wasn't long before organizations and individuals came out to pull away pieces as souvenirs, and then in later years people burned it as firewood when they came out to camp in the desert, until soon there was very little of it left.
Except for this stretch, which is under your control.
That's correct. The route of the Old Plank Road is what we call an area of critical environmental concern, which means it's a special area that is to be preserved for future generations so that people can see this piece of California history here.
And when they see it, what do you think we can gain from seeing this whole thing?
Well, a lot of us grew up with freeways and interstates, and it's hard to imagine that pioneers had to build something like this to get across these sand dunes that we take for granted. So it's a reminder of our past and the determination of the pioneers in the Imperial Valley and Yuma also.
Well, it was built.
It was built, and in fact, pieces of it are still here today.
Continuing our Southern California adventure, from the Plank Road in Imperial County, we headed west on Highway 94 to San Diego County. Now, Highway 94 is a windy road that goes through some beautiful country. We were heading for the little community of Campo, which is located about 60 miles east of San Diego. And right before we got to Campo, right there on the side of Highway 94, we passed by this field. Now, if you didn't know better, you'd think it was just another plain old field. But this field is one of the most historic in our entire state. Let's go back in time, about half a century, to World War II days, when this very field was used as a drill field, as a parade field for whole regiments of Army Horse Cavalry, specifically members of the 10th, 11th, and 28th Cavalry Regiments. Now, this whole area around Campo was part of Camp Lockett, and it was here that thousands of men and thousands of horses went through their training. In 1941 and 1942, the 11th Cavalry Regiment was stationed here, and after they left, from 1942 to 1944, the 10th and 28th Cavalry Regiments were here. Now, these were all black regiments, carrying on the proud tradition of the Buffalo Soldiers. And as it turned out, these were also the very last units of the Horse Cavalry in the U.S. Army. Now, back during the war, Camp Lockett was a bustling, busy place. These days, things are kind of quiet. Some of the old buildings and barracks have been converted for commercial use, but many of them stand empty and deserted. filled with nothing but memories. But memories were exactly what was on everybody's mind as the soldiers who went through training here gathered for their 50-year reunion. 3 days filled with seeing old friends, sharing old stories, and remembering what it was like to be in the horse cavalry. Were you good on a horse before you even got here?
Yeah, I came from Missouri.
So you knew what you were doing?
Yeah.
But a lot of these guys didn't, did they?
No, they come from Chicago. The first bunch of selectees, they call them, came in. They came from Chicago, New York. They front end and back end.
Well, did you laugh at them? Did you kind of make fun of them?
It was better to go to the trail in the morning than going to a rodeo. It was a rodeo. That horse, I have them old horses I've never been rode but once. So you know what them devils were like. They were wilder than hell, you know.
So you were watching a lot of these city slickers.
I used to go every morning. I never missed it. It was a 3-ring circus every morning.
It was a lot of fun. You've seen guys get kicked, stepped on, knocked down.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, thrown off. I've seen guys go straight up and come down on their heads.
In fact, they'd try to get on a horse backward.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Some of them.
They put the wrong foot in the stirrup, and they tried to swing up, and they'd be facing that way instead of this way.
We had this one big guy from Chicago, Wilson. I'll never forget him. Yeah, he about 6'2" or 3", and he'd get on the horse on one side and fall off the other. Absolutely.
I'd hate to see my old horse. He was a snake-bellied thing that I had to put a breast strap on him because when he'd go up a hill, the saddle would slide off. And so then I would end up back right on the rump, you see? And so they had to put a breast strap around the front to keep the saddle on him.
But you loved that old horse, didn't you?
Oh, sort of, yeah.
Wait a minute, I'm trying to get some touching horse stories here.
Well, we even, they were all had names. Mine was Tarzan.
Tarzan?
Tarzan was a remount. He was pretty wild and pretty frisky.
Now, how did you come up with the name Tarzan? Did you get to name the horses yourself?
No, they had them write a name for us, and they had a number.
This was Tarzan. Yours was?
Venus.
Venus.
Venus. She was Venus. She was 7/8 thoroughbred.
Wow. And your horse?
Mine was Mickey.
Mickey?
Mickey, and the number was W207. It was branded right up there on their neck, right by their head.
Yeah, mine was 3199.
I don't remember mine. That's one thing I forgot.
Tarzan, that's good enough.
That's good enough.
Now, does this remind you of your horse?
Very much so. Yes, it does. We eat, sleep, live with these horses. And they were our closest companion. They were our buddy. And we kept them clean. We groomed them. We cleaned them. And that includes everything. And we slept with them at night. I used his neck for a pillow. That was my pillow.
Really?
That was my pillow.
And they wouldn't mind you sleeping like that?
No, they stretch out. They stretch out and lay down.
Now, while everybody was watching you riding, they were talking about your bearing up on the horse. Now, is this all part of it?
Yeah, that's called the military seat. Where you ride the stirrup with your heels down, your toes up, legs close to the skirt, head up, chest out, elbows in, with the military seat. Light hands on the reins, and just as the posture you're supposed to maintain while riding. When you're in close order drill, you ride 4 feet, head to croup, 6 inches boot to boot. That's close order drill. You maintain that space while riding in close order.
Let me see your military bearing there. Let's see.
All right, you're now seeing me with the military seat.
That looks great. That looks great. And the horse knows you're in control, too, doesn't it?
Correct. I hope so.
Now, one of the highlights of the reunion was an afternoon train ride, courtesy of the San Diego Railroad Museum. The trip took us through some beautiful and rugged countryside. Countryside these ex-cavalrymen used to ride through on their horses. Now, is this the part of the country that you all would have been riding out on with your horses?
Absolutely, sir. We certainly would have. definitely.
So this brings back memories.
Many of them, many memories.
Well, now tell me a little bit about what it was like out there.
It was exactly as you see it now, wilderness, desolate, rattlesnake congested. Anything you wanted wrong, it was out there.
Would you just ride your horses out there, or would you march out here? Or?
There's, sometimes we would march, sometimes we would just ride.
Now, how far out would you ride on these outings?
Really, it was really no limit. We rode quite a ways out, sometimes as high as far as 50 miles.
Really?
Right.
Could the horses make it through this heavy terrain?
Oh, yes, sure. Right. Yeah, very easily. A horse is a very agile animal. Very agile.
Uh-huh.
Not as agile as a mule, but he's still agile.
Do you recognize any of this countryside?
Very, very little of it. Maybe he does, but I recall very, very little of it. It's been almost 50 years since we've been here.
What about it?
I recognize quite a bit because I rode off times on my off days. That's all I did. I stayed out here. I rode horses out here. But we had many 25-mile mounted and dismounted marches out in here where we brought the horses, but we didn't ride them.
Through this country?
Yes.
Well, now, look out there. That looks pretty rough to me.
But it's beautiful country, beautiful country. I loved it. Yeah. I loved every minute of it.
Did most of the guys get attached to their horses?
Oh, yeah. That's when we left here. The train was out there with loading train up. The old boys out there holding around the neck crying.
Yeah, that's how close they got to them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was rough.
To leave the horses?
Yeah.
Was it rough on you too?
Yeah, I love the old buggers.
It was an exceptional organization to be in because of it projected the pride and the spirit of corps by a mounted steed that you rode and your soldiers, you know, and it was good.
I feel good. I feel good, and I'm thankful that I was drafted into the Army, into the cavalry, the horse cavalry, and I'm glad I came this way.
It's really an emotional feeling to come back here, and I thought I'd never be back in this place. I was talking to the fellows, did you ever expect to get back here? No way.
Really, you were the last?
We were the last horse cavalry, the very last. There's no more after us.
You're gone, but you can still reminisce, you know. That's one thing about getting old. You can always remember the good times.
Well, that's the end of our little journey through the southernmost part of our state, with stops at Campo in San Diego County and the old plank road in the sand dunes of Imperial County. Both of those places we could have very easily missed if we hadn't known ahead of time they were there. But I guess if there's one thing we're learning as we continue our journeys through the state, is that if we'll just open up our eyes and look, there are all kinds of beautiful and historic places, many of them tucked away, just waiting to be discovered. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this particular visit, and as always, you're invited to come on along with us again next time, as we all continue our search together for California's gold.
California's Gold is provided to the PBS network statewide through a grant from Wells Fargo Bank, coming through for Californians for over 135 years.
A good way to find out more about California's rich and colorful history is to visit your local library and read up on it. The California Library Association recommends the following books: Back Roads of California by Earl Tholender, and Buffalo Soldiers by William H. Lackey. Now, if you're interested in finding out more about the historic Plank Road, the Bureau of Land Management has a nice pamphlet complete with maps and pictures they'll send you free of charge. Just write the Bureau of Land Management, El Centro Resource Area, 333 South Waterman Avenue, El Centro, California, 92243, and ask them for the Plank Road pamphlet. Hi, this is Huell Howser, and if you enjoyed this episode of California's Gold and would like to see it again, or share it with your family and friends, all you have to do is call 1-800-266-KPBS, and we'll send you a copy right away.
For member-supported public television, I'm Craig Dorval. Thanks a lot for being with us today. We're very glad that you've chosen KPBS, and we hope you're already a member of KPBS. This is our spring membership campaign, and this is an opportunity for you to do something about that. You can become a member right now by calling the 800 number on your screen and making a contribution of $7.50 a month for a year. And when you do that, we'll send you the KPBS Member Card Plus. We'll tell you more about that in just a moment. Coming up for you tonight at 8 o'clock and again at 10 o'clock, John Tesh, a brand new program, the Avalon Concert, this one is called. This features new compositions that were inspired by John Tesh's recent trip to Italy. And this was filmed in Catalina, just off our coast here of Southern California. So enjoy this program tonight at 8 and 10 o'clock here on KPBS.
When you become a supporting member of KPBS at $90 a year or more, you can receive the KPBS Member Card Plus. With the KPBS Member Card Plus, you'll receive a 20% discount on your entire bill when dining at more than 200 San Diego area restaurants, plus substantial savings at local arts, entertainment, family, and leisure activities. The KPBS Member Card Plus offers terrific savings. Call 1-800-576-5727 right now to receive your KPBS Member Card Plus. You make it happen. Call now.
From the legendary Avalon Ballroom, perched along the shores of the island paradise that is Santa Catalina, comes the power, the passion, and the music of John Tesh.
John Tesh, the Avalon Concert, tonight at 8 on KPBS. KPBS San Diego, member-supported public television.